Hello and welcome to the Spring 2 Week 1 Year 11 marking video on hormones in human reproduction. Right, we'll get started straight away. First few answers I've written down for you. One thing I wanted to check that you know, we've got using words in the box to complete the following sentences. When you look at these words, always look at the words first. FSH and make associations of what they mean. FSH, in my head I immediately think of the word mature egg. I think it looks like the word fish, and that fish grows out of an egg, so when an egg matures you end up with FSH. FSH matures the egg, and when I see LH, the letter L reminds me that something is leaving. It's the egg leaving the ovary. So that's what LH does. Always useful to jot those things down and remind ourselves of those. Right, many processes in the body are controlled by chemical substances. Underline those, we know what they are. Hormones. Secreted by glands, we know that. Transported in the blood. Just a reminder, multicellular organisms, I'm going to put MCO, but multicellular organisms have two things to help get substances around their body. They have exchange surfaces and they have transport systems. This is what we've been learning about recently. The bloodstream or the circulatory system is the transport system in animals. Were you listening to what I just said? What should I write here? Circulatory system. So our transport system, the way we get substances around our bodies in our blood, one of these chemical substances stimulates the release of an egg. Ooh, from an ovary. That sounds familiar, because we talked about this, didn't we? LH is the one that stimulates the release of the egg, so we'll drop that in there. Good. FSH instead matures the egg. Common mistake, that one. Hormones can be used to control fertility treatment. Draw one. List A gives the names of some hormones. List B gives some information about them. Draw a line from list A to list B. Okay, let's start with the ones we know. FSH we've already talked about. I think mature fish egg. Seems a bit silly, but it works for me. FSH stimulates eggs to mature fish. LH we've already talked about, leaves the ovary, stimulates the release of an egg. L for leaving, or L for release, fine. Progesterone slightly trickier. We've got two options of what progesterone might do. It might be used in contraceptive pills and it might cause the womb lining to break down. First of all, just think, okay, what am I sure about? I know that progesterone does what to the uterus lining? There should be a word springing to mind. We've taught you progesterone maintains the uterus lining. So you've then got to use that information and think, okay, which one of these is it? Causes the womb lining to break down is the opposite of progesterone. So that happens when there's no progesterone. Okay, it's the exact opposite. Happens in the absence of progesterone. So definitely not that one. So if you tick that one, you've gotten really confused. Okay, and I want you to spend a bit of time just thinking about these 2 points to realise why that's wrong. Progesterone is used in contraceptive pills as well as estrogen. Question about hormones. Hormones carry messengers. Type of messenger, draw a ring. Hormone is a chemical messenger. Should have that drilled in. Electrical messages are sent through the nervous system, of course. So when you see electrical, you think nervous system. When you see chemical, think endocrine system, hormones. If you want to annotate that, of course you can. Electrical would be in the nervous system. Chemical messengers are in the endocrine system, which is to do with hormones. Which part of the brain secretes hormones? Okay, so I want a bit of the brain, and we know that glands secrete hormones, so I'm looking for a gland in the brain. Draw a ring around it. The cerebellum gland? No. Medulla gland? No. Pituitary gland? Huh, that sounds good. Yep, indeed, it's in your brain. Secretes FSH and LH, among other things. Those are the two that we know. Figure 1 shows the level of pregnancy hormone. So this is the hormone level. It can be detected in a pregnancy test. So detected means the test can find out whether there's that hormone. Okay. A woman takes a pregnancy test down here. The question says, in which week of pregnancy is the test most likely to give a positive result? I've forgotten to plug this. Look, in which week is the test most likely to give a positive result? So the test detects the hormone. Alright, so which week of the pregnancy, and these are the weeks down on the x-axis, which week will the test be most likely to see the hormone. Okay, this is the hormone level. So at week 0 there's no hormone. Week 4 there's a tiny bit of hormone, and then it shoots up. Week 8, the most of that hormone is in week 8. So that's when the test is most likely to give the positive result. So week 8 is the answer that you want there. If you wrote 9 or 10, those are acceptable answers. 8's the obvious one to me. Right, figure 2 shows the levels of 3 other hormones during pregnancy. Babies usually born about 40 weeks. If you ever get something like that, I'd just put it on the diagram. It's always useful to add information to diagrams. So if you're told birth happens at 40 weeks, just find 40 weeks and write birth in, okay, and it will help you with the next question. Describe the patterns, this is a great question, by the way, in the levels of estrogen and progesterone from 0 to 36 weeks. Now, why is this a great question? Because you don't actually need to know anything. You just need to be able to interpret the diagram and use your words. So we're describing from 0 to 36, so don't describe any of this nonsense. They haven't asked for it. They've asked from 0 to 36. So if you say it drops, no marks for that. If you talk about oxytocin, no marks for that. Why? They asked for the levels of estrogen and progesterone, so ignore all of that. All you have to do is describe these 2 lines here. Okay, estrogen up to there, progesterone up to there. Here are some points that you could say. Any one of these points gets you a mark. Progesterone. When does it start being produced? There is no progesterone at 0 weeks. There's no progesterone at 2 weeks. It starts being produced at 4. Good? Mark or mark. What happens after 4 weeks? Well, it steadily increases all the way up to 36. I'm going to write P for progesterone, but progesterone then steadily increases up to 36 weeks. Estrogen. Estrogen is the thick black line. What happens at the start? Well, it's not changing. So we have some estrogen, low level of estrogen, from 0 weeks to 20 weeks. There's the mark. Low level, or you could say a constant low level, so it's not changing. Constant low level of estrogen from, what did I say, 0 to 20 weeks. 2 marks there. One for saying it's a low and one for saying it's constant, it doesn't change. Then, from 20 weeks to 36, it increases. O for estrogen, but you need to write out the full word. Then estrogen increases. What other things could you have said? I think those are the easiest things. From 20 to 36, we could talk about the rate. Estrogen is increasing much faster than progesterone. It's got a steeper gradient. Obviously, you wouldn't say from week 1 because it doesn't increase for ages. So from week 20, estrogen increases faster, or at a greater rate than progesterone. You could also talk about which is higher. If you'd said that the level of progesterone is higher from there, by the way, if you're wondering what that is, it's halfway between 4 and 8, so it's 6. So from week 6 up to week 36, the levels of progesterone are higher. You can also say that. I'm not going to write it down. Which hormone is likely to stimulate contractions of the uterus when the baby is born? I've double underlined when the baby is born because we need to now go to that point. Remember, I said it will be useful. You get given information like this, put it on your diagram. The baby's born here. So we're looking for the hormone that happens here. Well, that's obvious. Oxytocin is happening here. Okay? So which hormone stimulates the contractions of the uterus at that point? It's got to be oxytocin. Right? There are no contractions for the 39 weeks, and then all of a sudden, baby gets born, oxytocin levels are really high, it's obviously causing the contractions. By the way, we need to use information and we need to give a reason. So, first mark is for saying oxytocin, good. Let me spell it right, tocin. The second mark is for saying because the levels of oxytocin increase at 40 weeks, or increase just before birth. Lovely. Moving on. Hormones can be used as contraceptives. Contraceptives prevent pregnancy, if you don't know that. I mean, it even says it here. Explain one way in which a hormone can prevent conception. There are two contraceptives that use hormones, but you don't actually get the mark for naming them. You need to explain the hormone itself. So if you said the contraceptive pill, or if you said the implant, you don't get the mark. You get the mark for saying the hormone. The contraceptive pill and the implant both inhibit or stop FSH from being produced. That's what they do. They stop the egg from maturing, they stop FSH from being produced. That's your first mark. FSH, normally, we've talked about it, it normally matures the egg. So if they stop FSH, then it stops the egg from maturing. It's a tricky question, that. So I'll just say it again, you don't get a mark for naming the contraception itself. You need to explain how the hormone does its job, and the way that those contraceptives work, the pill or the implant, is they stop or inhibit FSH from being produced and therefore stop the egg from maturing. Moving on. Right, if you didn't read or bug this information, you're very naughty. You must have read and bugged this information to answer this question. Two methods of giving contraceptive hormones to women. Hormonal methods of contraception. The vaginal ring and the hormone implant. Vaginal ring, flexible ring, 54mm in diameter, containing hormones. There's nothing there for me, so I'm not bugged any of it. The woman puts in and takes out the vaginal ring herself. That's important. If you haven't bugged it, you've missed a trick. There's no wrong way to put the ring in. So think about it. If somebody said, here you are, you can just do this at home on your own, that's easy, right? We're thinking that's a good thing. I'm going to write a little positive sign here. You might write a little A. That's a good thing, okay? Each ring is designed for one cycle of use, which is 3 weeks of continuous ring use, followed by 1 week without the ring. Good thing or bad thing? Imagine you pay, I don't know how much this thing is, but suppose it's 10 quid and you can only use it for 3 weeks. Bad thing, okay? Ideally, you want that thing to last for a long time. 0.3% of women become pregnant in the first year of ring use. Let's talk about what that means, the success rate is. If out of 100% of people, 0.3 of them it doesn't work for, which means that the success rate is 99.7%. Now, we're not going to say yet whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's better than, say, the ribbon method, but it's not 100%, so I'm not decided yet whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I've worked it out. 4% of women stop using the ring because of vaginal discomfort. Now that's obviously not a good thing. Nobody wants vaginal discomfort, so we're going to make that a negative. Although, maybe 4% is quite a low number. Right, hormone implant. Health professional puts the hormone implant under the skin of the woman's arm. Perhaps some of you thought, that sounds good, but imagine the faff, right? Basically, you've got to book a GP appointment, you've got to go and see the health professional, you've got to take time out of your job or whatever it might be. Whereas the vaginal ring, you can just do yourself at home in the bathroom. So that's a disadvantage. It's a faff to have to go and see the health professional. The implant releases contraceptive hormones for 3 years. Woohoo! Remember, the vaginal ring, it only lasted 3 weeks. The implant lasts 3 years. Great. That's well worth the time. Hormone implant is 100% effective. Now we can do it. Obviously that's a good thing, right? If you've got the implant, you are not getting pregnant, 100% for certain. Whereas this one was 99.7, so actually that's less good. Okay, I know it seems quite high, but it's not as good as the hormone implant. 2% of women stop using the hormone implant because of irregular menstrual bleeding, so that's a good thing. Let's compare. Over here we had 4% of women because they've got vaginal discomfort. Right, so that's 4 out of every 100 women find it uncomfortable. This is 2 out of every 100 women, so fewer women stop using it. Evaluate the use of the vaginal ring compared to the hormone implant. Let's talk about the words we should use. An absolute classic is whereas. If you haven't got the word whereas in your answer, you've missed a trick. Compared to is another classic that you could use in your answer. Okay, you must have used comparative language. Interestingly, I'm just checking the mark scheme here. If you haven't used comparative language, you don't actually get the mark. Have a look here. I'll show you the mark scheme. Okay, comparison is underlined. That's how important it is. Every single answer has the word whereas underlined. If you haven't used that word, you have absolutely lost at least half the marks on this question. Okay? 4 marks, so I'm going to try and make 4 comparisons if possible. Now, interestingly, you would have noticed the mark scheme actually only needed 3 comparisons. The last marks for the conclusion. Okay? We're going to try and make 4 for 4 marks, but actually you get 3 marks for the points and 1 mark for the conclusion. If you haven't given a conclusion, you only get 3 marks. Right? Here are going to be my points. I'll get my information up so that you can refer back to it. Okay? That's the information, and here's my answer. I'm going to say the vaginal ring is easier to put in, or the vaginal ring can be put in by the woman. Easily inserted. What word shall I put? Should be shouting it at your computer screens. Whereas, unless you're in compulsory homework, don't shout in compulsory homework. Whereas the implant requires a health professional. Next point, what have we got? The implant only lasts for 3 weeks of continuous use, whereas, I should be writing this, shouldn't I? Implant only lasts for 3 weeks of use, whereas the blimey, look, she said implant, completely load of nonsense. Vaginal ring only lasts for 3 weeks, whereas the implant lasts for 3 years. I'm building up an argument here that the implant's better, so this point also fits with my argument. The implant is 100% effective, whereas there is a chance, 0.3 chance, I'm using the data I've been given, of getting pregnant. Using the vaginal ring. Now, a few other things you might have said. You might have talked about the number giving up, of course. The number giving up the vaginal ring was 4%, whereas the number giving up the implant was 2%. You might have said the ring might cause vaginal discomfort, whereas the implant may cause vaginal or irregular menstrual bleeding. I think those are the key points, really. Okay. Finally, for the final mark, so you only get max 3 marks for those, you need a conclusion. My conclusion is obviously the implant's better. Okay, therefore implant is a better option because it's more effective, lasts longer, and what was my third point? And you see, it's clear he's not been paying attention. Whereas because it's more effective and lasts longer. Okay, it's fine. I've given a disadvantage of it, but 2 of my points are saying the implant's better. Okay, therefore the implant's a better option because it's more effective and lasts longer. Right. If you stopped there, if you're a foundation pupil, you can call it a day. That's your video done. If you did do question 5, higher tier pupil, you need to continue working through with me. Let's have a look at this last question. Female reproductive hormones interact to control the menstrual cycle. You should be familiar with this graph. The graph shows how the concentration of 4 hormones changes during the 28-day menstrual cycle. This is the concentration of the hormones. 4 hormones are represented by 4 different lines. This is time on the x-axis. I've labelled menstruation here on day 28. That comes up later, doesn't it? As I said, same old trick. If they give you some information, like menstruation starts on day 28, write that on your graph. Okay, what have we got? Let's just start with our first question, shall we? 2 effects of progesterone. The one that springs to mind, the one we've talked about already, the one you should have drilled in by your teachers, is maintains the lining, uterus lining. The other one, you might need to think about a little bit more, causes eggs to develop. That sounds like FSH to me. The old mature fish. Causes eggs to develop. Stimulates estrogen production. Interesting. potentially, let's have a little look. Does FSH stimulate estrogen production? Could do. Stimulates LH production. Could do. Or suppresses FSH. Progesterone, does it suppress FSH? Okay, so this is why this one's trickier. I tell you what, it's not tricky. Cortisols develop, we're ruling it out. That's FSH. Stimulates estrogen production. Here's progesterone, and here's estrogen. That's when the estrogen's produced. It definitely doesn't do that. Stimulates LH production. Here's progesterone. Here's LH. No. The LH is produced at day 12, and progesterone doesn't start getting produced till day 18. So, no. Suppresses FSH. We're going to go for. Okay, and also you might just know from your teachers that is what progesterone does. Suppress LH. By the way, that's what's used in the contraceptive pill. We talked about that. That came up in a question earlier. Why progesterone is used in the contraceptive pill. Okay, in the graph, menstruation starts on day 28. Remember we marked that. Explain the change that takes place to cause menstruation. Use information from the graph. Okie dokie. What sudden change happens around this area that causes menstruation? This isn't particularly sudden. This isn't particularly sudden though. Potentially. This, humongous. Like we have a humongous drop in progesterone. So that seems like the obvious answer, doesn't it? Sudden drop in progesterone. That's your first mark. That's my information from the graph. Now I need to explain. I always say in my videos, if you see the word explain, you've got to say why. So 1 mark is using information from the graph, which we've done. Progesterone suddenly drops. Now explain why. Remember what progesterone does? Maintains the lining of the uterus. Okay, so if you suddenly lose all your progesterone, you suddenly lose all your uterus lining. Okay, which causes the uterus lining to break down or break away. Makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, progesterone maintains the lining of the uterus. So if all of a sudden all your progesterone disappears, all of a sudden all your uterus lining is going to break down, and that's what causes menstrual bleeding. Okay, injections of specific hormones are used to treat infertility. Explain, tell me why. How these hormones can increase the chance of having a baby. Okie dokie. This one requires a bit of knowledge from you, doesn't it? The hormones that would be injected to treat infertility are FSH and LH. Okay, so you need to tell me what those do. First of all, you need to know that, and then you need to tell me what they do. FSH, let's start with that. We've talked many times in this video about what it does. It stimulates the maturation, or stimulates eggs to mature, or ovum, of course you could say. It stimulates the maturation of the egg. It does something else, which you should know. Here's FSH. When we get an increase in FSH, notice we then get an increase in estrogen. You should also know, stimulates the release of estrogen. Then we need to explain what that does. Why does the woman need estrogen? How does that increase her chance of having a baby? Well, estrogen, do you know, maintains the uterus lining, thickens the uterus lining. Why does that increase? Why? Notice I'm telling you why. Why does that increase the woman's chance of having a baby? For the fertilised egg, or the zygote we could call it, to save time, to implant into. Finally, I also talked, of course, about LH. Why does a woman need a LH? Why would that increase her chance of getting pregnant? LH injections would... do you remember what I said about the letter L? The letter L stands, in my mind, for leaving. It causes the ovum to leave the ovary. So LH injections would cause ovum to be released. Now obviously, if the ovum doesn't get released, that woman's not having a baby. So LH injections definitely increase the chance of having a baby because they release ovums. Forgotten how to spell release. Release. There we are. Would cause ovum to be released, and that increases the chance of having a baby. By the way, if you said obviously ovum being released, technical term for that is ovulation. So if you said LH injections cause ovulation, you're correct as well. Okay, and there we are. That's your 30 marks. Over in 25 minutes. You can write me a postcard next week. Any questions, obviously speak to your science teachers in your clinic.